build your entire identity and value system on a single pursuit, or more specifically, like you said, a single outcome, winning a record, whatever. Once you get there, everything falls apart. Or if you're forced to retire, everything falls apart. It becomes an existential crisis rather than a career change or an accomplishment. That again is why it's so critical for people to understand why they're doing what they're doing and how that fits into themselves as a whole human being, not just an athlete. Or this goes for careers too, like not just a whatever you do for a living. Those things are all ephemeral ultimately. Like they change, they're not reliable. And if you are entirely dependent on those for any sense of happiness, you're going to be in for a real tough latter part of your life once that is over, because it will not last forever.
Do you wish you could prioritize working out, but your busy schedule just always seems to get in the way? In this episode, I speak to Greg Everett, an expert weightlifting coach known for his work with national champions and record holders, his role as the coach of the Catalyst Athletics USA Weightlifting team, and his acclaimed books on weightlifting and fitness. Greg offers strategies for overcoming time barriers, building effective and sustainable habits, and achieving long-term success in your fitness journey. If you're a busy professional or you're just looking to make the most out of limited time, Greg's insights will help you change your approach to fitness. Welcome to Move Your Mind, where we uncover why you are holding yourself back from getting the life you want and what to do about it. With the help from high-achieving guests and experts in behavioral science, personal development, and the health and wellness space. Join us if you're ready to move out of your own way toward your ideal self. I'm your host, Nick Brax, and I've been working in the health and wellness space for the last 15 years, helping people find direction and gain the courage to take control of their life. My mission is simple: to help you learn everything that I wish I knew, so you can become your ideal self. Lacking guidance, I spent the majority of my youth feeling lost and disempowered, which led to depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, and substance abuse. Looking back, I didn't have the vocabulary to communicate what I was experiencing. And as a man, I didn't resonate with the emotional language used in traditional therapy. I didn't need to talk about my feelings. I needed tangible solutions to guide me toward building a life I was proud of. If you can relate, then this podcast is for you. In this episode, we discuss how to maximize fitness results with limited time. If you're ready to take action and build a stronger mindset, then keep listening. Greg, so nice to meet you, mate. Thank you for making the time to come on my podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I appreciate you having me.
Appreciate it. All the way from Oregon. We were talking before about how beautiful it is out there. I went there, I think 3 years ago, but I grew up idolizing Steve Prefontaine. I don't know if you know him, like a famous middle distance runner. So when I went there, I stayed in Eugene, near where he trained, and I went and checked out where he had the car crash, and was obsessed with this guy. He was sort of my idol growing up. So, but I just couldn't believe how beautiful Oregon was. It's the only place I've seen in the US where sort of the beaches and that sort of stuff compared to Australia. It was like stunning out there.
Oh yeah. The whole West Coast, California through Oregon and some of Washington is pretty incredible.
Yeah, that whole Pacific, like Northwest, is so beautiful. So I always ask the guest before we get into it, can you just give a bit of a background on yourself and how you came to be doing what you're doing?
Sure. So I do a lot of different things, and all kind of under this very broad umbrella of a company called Catalyst Athletics, which I started in 2006. And so even prior to that, though, I was training and coaching various things, and got focused specifically on the Olympic sport of weightlifting, many years ago. And so Catalyst Athletics is a weightlifting team, full of competitive athletes that both my wife and I coach. Not together. We each kind of have our own athletes who represent the team. But then it's also a company that publishes instructional material. So anything from books, to video, to articles, to social media content. I mean, every platform you can think of, we've done it and or still do it. And so that's really the primary thing I do is create content that is related to the sport of weightlifting. And then in recent years, I've kind of branched out a little more in that outside of that specific region and started doing, I wrote another book called Tough a couple years ago that was more about, and it's such a terribly named book. It's so misrepresentative, but that was kind of the point, of really mental and physical and emotional toughness. But the way I'm explaining it is that it's not toughness in the conventional sense that most of us believe. And so it's really about strategies of improving, securing mental health success, this sense of fulfillment and contentment, and finding and developing your true identity and values, and all these things that eventually over time add up to happier people, more successful people, more content people who get along with each other better.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. And Tough, I think it is a good name for it, because like you're saying there, the traditional thing, people think tough, just get strong so you can win in a fight, or you can be, you can carry yourself well. But it's sort of the biggest part about the work that I do in mental health. I've found, and on a personal level, exercise, going to the gym, doing weights, all these different things, having that discipline of doing it, and what it does to your mentality, and what it does to how that discipline translates to every other part of life, just helps so dramatically with your resilience. So I think it's just, there's so many levels to this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just such an important thing. So how did you wind up focusing on the weightlifting side? Were you always interested in general in the area of fitness, and that was where you specialized in? What led to that?
Yeah. I mean, it's for as long as I can remember, since really young age, I was interested in training, exercise, sports, all these things. And I played all the traditional kind of American boy sports, plus a lot of the more obscure ones. Rock climbing, and I competed in bike trials and all these weird things. But the common thread for me was the physical preparation. And I didn't recognize it for many years, but I was always kind of more interested in the training side of things than the actual sport and competition itself. And so when I discovered Olympic weightlifting kind of accidentally, it was sort of this thing where it's almost one and the same, right? It's more closely tied, the preparation and the competition, the actual sport are more closely tied than the typical sport, right? So it's like you can engage in this thing as a sport, as a competitive athlete, but it still allowed me to really be focusing on the elements of sport that I enjoyed most. And so, the getting into it as a coach was not exactly like a conscious decision on my part. It just sort of happened organically, where because of my circumstances, I was around and kind of had enough of a public presence that my natural kind of desire is to help people. So I start putting out information, and in particular, because there was sort of a dearth of Olympic weightlifting related information at this time, 20 years ago, I got very successful very quickly, because it's really easy to do when you don't have much competition. And so fortunately, that allowed me kind of this time and space to develop more as an athlete, as a coach, as a content creator, and kind of get ahead of the crowd, so to speak. And so that, now 20 years later, I have such this massive body of work that I don't know if anyone will be able to catch up in the foreseeable future. And it allows me to kind of archive that stuff and still be able to use it while not having to produce quite as much at the same rate that I had to for so many years. And so I know this is so far afield from your original question, but the point is, it was like a very organic process, and it wasn't, I still to this day don't have a business plan. And when I get calls, people, can I do a business consultation? And I politely turn them down and say, I assure you, you don't want business advice from me. I am flying by the seat of my pants every single day.
But you know what? I think what you've said there is and a lot of people listening to this podcast are people that are looking to do their own business, entrepreneurial people. And if we focus on this area that we're talking about, the health and fitness industry, there's so many people in it. And there's so many ways you can go about it. And there's so many people that will tell you have to do it this way or that way or whatever. But I think the piece of advice you said before about what you even liked about training, and I agree with you on this. I share the same thing, where I come from a competitive sporting background. And what I loved was the actual training part more than competing. And I think if you have that mindset with anything in life, if you enjoy the process of what you're doing, then results will probably come, because you're going to be putting out so much more, you're going to have so much more output. And on top of that, you don't really care as much about the results because you actually like what you're doing. So I think that's such a critical part of the process for anyone doing anything.
Yeah. Well, and that's actually a really important point you make, is that you start to kind of redefine the metrics of success. And, typically you look at a business and it is all about profit, potentially growth, all these things. And you start to kind of turn away from that and look more at, what am I providing to people? Like, am I providing something of value, of quality, that is benefiting people, which is what I want to do? And am I getting, that sense of fulfillment from it? Like, does this make me feel successful, rather than does my wallet just tell me I'm successful? Because that's so many people's problem, speaking of mental health, is that we have these metrics for success that don't align with our identity and our values at all. And yet we just beat ourselves to death day to day pursuing these things, without recognizing that it's, we're just kind of going in circles, because we're never getting closer to what actually will make us happy and content.
Yeah, again, and it's, not a trivial thing. Society is geared to pull us that way. And, giving an example from my own life, I, have sort of always known what I wanted to do. And I've built this brand, Move Your Mind, which is mental health, fitness, a personal brand around that. But while I was doing that in my 20s, I kept trying, because I wanted to make more money. And I saw my friends doing startups I was trying to do all these crazy tech startups, trying to raise money, do these different things that I didn't even want to do. And even if they worked, I wouldn't have got, even if it became worth any amount of money, I wouldn't have got the same fulfillment as just sticking to what now that I've stuck to doing, because it wasn't aligned with what I wanted. And, it's like anything. You hear people, you hear from a celebrity that, makes it to the top and becomes famous and makes all the money. They'll tell you that they actually got more depressed when that happened, because they realized there is no silver bullet to any of this. The silver bullet is just doing what you enjoy doing. You're looking to make a change, to lose weight, to get toned, to gain self-confidence, all in just 24 minutes a day, then go no further. You can check out the Move Your Mind community by going to nickbrax.start.page.
Absolutely. Yeah. And of course you have to be able to earn a reasonable living. Like, we can't dismiss the fact that you do need a certain level of reliable income. But once you have attained that and you can at least sustain that, then the rest of it should be totally geared toward what you love doing and what makes you happy. And so I think that's the hardest part for people, is recognizing that it doesn't have to be one or the other necessarily. You kind of have to find that balance that works for you, that works in your circumstances. And they're in my case, for example, and I think this is probably true in most cases, there's going to be an initial period where you really do have to go through things that you don't enjoy. If there's always going to be parts you don't enjoy, you're going to have to do more. You're going to have to put in way more hours For years and years, it was 7 days a week, all day long. But I knew, even if it wasn't a conscious decision, I didn't have a plan, I knew that that would more quickly get me to a place where I could back off of that and start actually living a life that was supported by these things I had done. It wasn't something I was planning, I'm going to work 7 days a week, 12-hour days until I'm 60 and then retire and have 2 fun years before I die. It was, let's do this now because I have this opportunity. I'm young. I have the energy. I don't have as many obligations. And so this is the time to jump on that. And so that was fulfilling to me at the time, that idea of being like massively productive and busy. I did enjoy that regardless of how stressful it was. Now I'm 44. I don't enjoy it as much, right? I recognize that there are other things in my life that I want to be investing my time and energy into, rather than sitting in front of a computer and just like furiously banging things out for social media or, whatever the case is. And so I've learned to kind of find that balance and pay more attention to what I'm actually doing and why I'm doing it and what the result is, rather than just this, sort of ledger sort of approach to it where I have to do X, Y, and Z to get, A, B, and C. And then somehow that's going to add up to, happiness.
I love that. Yeah. Cause you have to, like you're saying, you have to have that foundation so you can have, the platform and you can create that sort of, engine behind what you're doing. But this mindset that we can only sort of live the life we want when we get to X amount of money or blah, blah, blah. It means you actually don't live your life right now. And I mean, we were talking before we started, you're saying you're living in the middle of Oregon, you got this amazing lifestyle and you can build your business. It's like, well, why not enjoy, live your ideal lifestyle while you're actually doing it? So I think, how have you gone about setting that up? I mean, being able to, I guess technology allows us to do it, but being able to live in the middle of Oregon, build, continue doing what you're doing, having the impact you're having, but choosing that lifestyle, has that been a hard thing to navigate? How have you made that work? If you're looking to make a change, to lose weight, to get toned, to gain self-confidence, all in just 24 minutes a day, then go no further. You can check out the Move Your Mind community by going to nickbrax.start.page.
Initially it was a bit tricky. And, to be fair, the technology is what allowed my wife and I even the option to do what we're doing. Because so we moved here in 2016. So it's been, 8 years. Even right when we moved, it was kind of borderline where, we had owned a gym. That's where we coached our weightlifters. It was me primarily coaching at that time. And I was still doing all the content and seminars and all these things in addition to that. But at that time, it wasn't, the technology wasn't quite at the level where you could do really high quality remote coaching at scale. You could do a couple people here and there. But it wasn't a thing where, like now I have a bunch of online clients in groups. That is a great source of income for me. And it's a great way for me to help a bunch of people who I either don't have time for individually or could never afford it individually. And so we were right on that border where it was like, okay, we really don't want to be in the gym business anymore because that's not what we want to do. It's a tough business, especially where we were. And it's not about coaching, it's about business. And that's not what was making us happy. We were miserable. And so we realized like, okay, we're probably at a point now where we have enough of a reputation established that even if we don't have this public physical location, athletes will still come to us. We'll be able to coach them remotely. All the other side of the business, the content, I can do that from anywhere as long as I have an internet connection. And so that wasn't an issue. And so that first couple years, it was a slow transition initially. But now, I coach more athletes now than I ever did before, all remote. And I can coach athletes literally from all over the world. I have athletes from like 7 or 8 different countries now, who are competing at the, continental and world championship level. And it's just not something I would have even been able to imagine 10 years ago. And I don't think it would have been possible, at least in this way, this successfully. So yeah, it's understanding what you want, what makes you happy, but then also having a sense of what the circumstances will allow at any given time. And that goes both ways, right? Like not getting ahead of yourself and trying to do something that the infrastructure or technology or whatever doesn't allow yet. But on the other hand, not saying, well, I can't do this now, therefore I can't ever do it, right? There's all opportunities always change. And the saying is opportunity only knocks once, but I don't think that's true. I think opportunity comes around again every once in a while. And as long as you are prepared and paying attention to it, you can take advantage of it in the right time, with respect to everything else that's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. How big of a correlation would you say from your experience in this industry that there is between mental health and exercise? Are you interested in joining a community of like-minded people who are on the same journey as you are? Even though you're the one that needs to do the work, you don't have to go it alone. You can find all of the information at nickbrax.start.page.
Oh, it's huge. And, one of the things I addressed in that book, Tough, was I think so many mental health professionals, resources focus strictly on the mental and emotional side. And you've made the point a couple of times here that the physical side of it is huge. And so I wanted to make that very clear in the book. And it's not even just the mental and emotional side of the physical work. So like you mentioned, the idea of discipline and routine and this kind of like investment and pride and accomplishment and all these things. Those are all going to bolster our kind of mental state and help us in that sense. But in addition to that, you have actual physiological changes that are also going to improve mental health, right? So it isn't just like this sort of indirect response mentally and emotionally. It is physical, right? And you can't, the research is out there. It's pretty clear. And anecdotally, it's even clearer. You can't be like a fully formed, functional, happy, fulfilled human being without the physical side. Like we are physical beings. That is such a huge part of our experience, evolutionarily speaking, in our presence. And I think that is one of the huge issues that why people are so unhappy and unfulfilled and just miserable and looking for all these things to change that, whether it's validation through social media or, Netflix for 18 hours a day, or these kind of escapist approaches, is because they're missing such a critical, fundamental piece of what being human is. And that involves physical activity. And it doesn't all have to be the same. It doesn't have to be Olympic weightlifting. It doesn't have to be running, but the body is made to do these things, and the mind is made to function inside of a body doing these things. And so when you start removing whole pieces from that system, the system stops functioning properly. And I don't think it's more complicated than that.
That's a great answer. Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing where, we're not built to be sitting behind a desk, sitting at a computer, sitting on the couch. We're meant to be moving, and, we feel the difference. And have you found that, I think what I see even in friends, one of the biggest barriers to people sticking to exercise or going to the gym is, just the convenience of it. A lot of the time people, can't be bothered traveling to go to a gym, or they're intimidated, or, there's going to be all these barriers of reasons why you can't do it. How do you think the online part, the technology improving, being able to train people and have people train from anywhere, whether that be at home, in a park, whatever it is, has that sort of helped a lot with making all of this more accessible to more people, or more sustainable for people to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, both. The accessibility, the sustainability. There are far fewer excuses now that people can legitimately make. They'll still make them. I mean, if you genuinely don't want to do something, you will find a way to rationalize not doing it, no matter what the circumstances are, right? But yes, and so one of the biggest things is, I mean, especially depending on where you live, if you live in a big city or rural, even getting to a gym can legitimately be hours of your day. Even if you're going to go work out for 30, 45 minutes. And so someone who's working a job, has a family, all these things, it's arguably physically not possible. A lot of people are out there giving everyone grief, like, oh, it's nonsense if you say you don't have time. Well, no, some people legitimately don't have time. They're working 2 jobs. They have 3 kids and a wife or a husband and all these things. I'm not going to give them grief about saying I don't have time or energy. I get it. That said, I think one of the great things about the online, even just information, like you don't even have to be part of a group or getting coaching or anything like that. The information is there to allow you to throw something together that you can do anywhere, anytime. I mean, literally, if it's 10 minutes when you first get up in the morning before you start getting ready for work, doing a quick circuit of calisthenics or going for a walk. I mean, there are so many options. And I think that's the huge accessibility part is learning those things so that you recognize, not only do I not have to go to a gym, I don't have to have equipment at my house even. There are so many things you can do to make it work, at least temporarily, that you are doing something. And then the more you do that, the more consistently you do that, the more you feel the results, you recognize the benefit, and the more you are going to be willing and able to make whatever changes are necessary to expand on that in the future.
Are you interested in joining a community of like-minded people who are on the same journey as you are? Even though you're the one that needs to do the work, you don't have to go it alone. You can find all of the information at nickbrax.start.page.
Yeah, absolutely. And how can people get around? I mean, getting a coach is definitely one part for the accountability part, because I think, like you're saying there, once you sort of make that step and you find, okay, I don't have time to go to the gym, I'm going to put a routine together, something I can do for 15 minutes in my bedroom if I need to. And I do it for a little bit, I feel good, great, but then other things come up in life and, you don't stick to it. So a lot of the time people need the coaching, or they need someone to hold them accountable. What are ways people can make themselves stay accountable and stick to these things long term?
Some kind of community aspect is really helpful. So, and I include coaching in that, right? Any interpersonal interaction you have is community, right? So whether it's a coach or a trainer that you feel accountable to, who's kind of checking in on you, or it's a friend or a spouse or significant other where you say, hey, let's get on this thing together. Let's, keep each other on track. And that, we see that, I think, most commonly with like eating habits and nutrition, right? If you have a married couple living in the house together, it is very difficult for one to clean up their nutrition if the other is not, right? So if you can get everybody in a household on board, that makes it infinitely easier to maintain that and to build it into a habit rather than something that requires willpower. And that's the goal for all this stuff. The word discipline gets thrown around a lot these days as this buzzword, right? And it's all about being disciplined. And I picture this like really angry, unhappy guy sitting on the edge of his very tightly made bed in a bare-walled room, single light bulb, just, gritting his teeth, thinking about being disciplined. And that sounds like a miserable existence, right? So it's not about discipline long-term. It's about building habits and routines that free up our very actually limited amount of willpower on a daily basis for more difficult, unique decisions that we have to make day to day, right? So exercising, eating, sleeping, those should all be habitual long term, right? You can't, you are not able to get up every morning and spend time and energy thinking and planning and forcing yourself to do these things over and over and over and over again. You have to kind of take them, one element at a time, whatever you're able to tolerate, get that consistency with that discipline and that willpower initially until it becomes a habit. It becomes a lifestyle. And then you don't really have to think about it. I haven't had to force myself into a gym for 30 years, right? It's part of my life. It is just who I am and what I do. And I'm not saying everybody's going to be like that long term. It's, not everyone wants to be an athlete. That's not that big a deal. But the point is you can create those habits and ingrain them into your life to the degree that you don't really ever have to think about them or, worry about, oh, am I going to be able to get this done today? Yeah, of course you are. Same way you brush your teeth every day or eat dinner every day, right? It's just
exactly
what you do at some point.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, please click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram at NickBrax. I really appreciate your ongoing support.
Exactly, yeah, 100%. And that's the beautiful thing about creating those habits. Like you're saying, maybe it won't be something that you love as much as yourself or, as much as I love as well. But if you make it that habit, it becomes easy because you don't think about it. It just becomes part of what you do. What would be the biggest thing that you've personally learned from all of the different professional athletes you've worked with?
Oh, man. I think I would have to say that the longer I've done this, the more I have backed away from this idea that the sport itself is the most important part. In other words, if I'm coaching an athlete, it's not about like this world championships or this medal or this record. Like, this is what matters. It is you being happy and enjoying your life is what matters. And right now, doing this sport in this way is making you happy and fulfilled. And so that's what we're pursuing. But remembering why are we doing this? Like, is it because you want people to check you out and be impressed by you when you're standing up there on the podium? Or is it because this pursuit and these accomplishments give you that sense of contentment and fulfillment and kind of internal validation of your own values? And so it's really kind of helping to redirect their focus on that versus creating this like false pressure and need to achieve these more objective things, for whatever arbitrary reason or unhealthy reason. Like, oh, my dad said I was going to be a failure. I'll prove him wrong. You're never going to be happy if that's your motivation for doing anything, right? You can achieve these amazing things objectively and still be completely miserable. Just like we talked about earlier, you can make millions of dollars and be absolutely miserable if that is not what is actually meaningful to you. So more and more the past couple of years, I've found myself, just the way I speak to my athletes and the way I kind of navigate difficulties in training or competition is like, listen, we're not curing cancer. We're not ending a fascist regime in Europe. Like, it's just sport. This is your life. This is what matters to you now. If you are not enjoying it right now, we need to make a change. I'm not here to push you to do something you don't want to do. I'm here to help you figure out what you want to do, why, and then help you do it as well as you possibly can to achieve those purposes.
Yeah, great point there. And I mean, you see this in so many professional athletes where they achieve, the pinnacle of their sport, whatever it is, and they become depressed. Or when they retire, they go into a deep depression. I mean, I interviewed an Olympic gold medal winning diver, and he became an ice addict after he won a gold medal, and he became suicidal. And you look at Michael Phelps, the most decorated Olympic athlete in history, and he was suicidal after it. And it's like, well, if on that level, it shows that no matter what point you get to, if you're not looking after yourself and finding sustainable ways to enjoy what you're doing, and it's attached to these outcomes, then you're going to struggle. Yeah.
When you build your entire identity and value system on a single pursuit, or more specifically, like you said, a single outcome, winning a record, whatever. Once you get there, everything falls apart. Or if you're forced to retire, everything falls apart. It becomes an existential crisis rather than a career change or an accomplishment, right? And so that again is why it's so critical for people to understand why they're doing what they're doing and how that fits into themselves as a whole human being, not just an athlete. Or this goes for careers too, like not just a whatever you do for a living. And because those things are all ephemeral ultimately, like they change, they're not reliable. And if you are entirely dependent on those for any sense of happiness, you're going to be in for a real tough latter part of your life once that is over, because it will not last forever.
Yeah, everything ebbs and flows in life. And so I finished with 5 closing questions. These can be sort of quick answers. Before I go into that, just final question on this subject. What do you personally do to look after your mental health and well-being on a daily or weekly basis?
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, please click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram at NickBrax. I really appreciate your ongoing support.
Admittedly, not enough, but I'm a lot better at it than I used to be. So one of the biggest things is, the last several years is creating a solid morning routine in which I start my day. And I'm fortunate here where I am. I can go outside and we have some property, and I can go for a walk in the morning with my cup of coffee. And, I don't touch my phone. I don't look at my computer, nothing until I've done this. I'll come back. I'll do my journal routine. So, 3 pretty simple prompts, just kind of looking at the previous day, expressing gratitude, focusing on that. And then essentially, I guess the buzzword these days is manifesting and kind of looking at who am I, what is today going to look like, those sorts of things. And that's, I will not do anything else in my day until I've done that, because I feel like that really resets me. It kind of keeps the anxiety and the stress at bay and helps me refocus on being really intentional about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, who I am, and why these things matter to me. And that, like, staying really conscious and in touch with that stuff every single day, I think has been the biggest contributor lately to my ability to make decisions about my business or about coaching or these things where I don't get caught up in, I have to do this for the sake of the business. It's, well, what do I want to do to continue this business in a way that supports the lifestyle I want to live and will hopefully allow me to retire before I'm 90. And rather than, I just have to, put my nose to the grindstone and do this for the next 30 years nonstop and just grit my teeth and get it over with.
Yeah.
And so, and taking at least one day off a week, I try to, from work and from social media, has been really big, and just staying off social media as much as possible outside. So like, I basically, my routine now is I have a window in the morning and a window in the evening where I get on my social media accounts. I do whatever I need to do for work. I respond to people's messages, whatever. I laugh at the meme one of my friends sent or whatever, and then I put my phone away again.
Yeah.
The combination of those things has been really huge. And it's all about, again, to me, the fundamental piece of mental health is understanding who you are and what matters to you, what's important. And then that's what allows you to structure your life to support those things, rather than just kind of getting sucked into whatever everybody else is doing, or what you believe you're supposed to be doing. And that's how we get 30 years down the road and realize, wow, I hate my career and my life, and I don't want to do any of this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Great answer. Well, 5 closing questions here. Like I was saying, these can be sort of quick answers, but the first one is, what's your best childhood memory that comes to mind?
Oh, wow. I think probably I used to go to the beach every fall with my dad and some other families, and did that every year since I was born until I was a teenager. And so the little snippets of memories I have from a lot of those weekends are probably right on top.
What do you think's currently the biggest burden on mental health in society?
Oh boy. I'm not sure if I'm going to express this in the right way, or if it's kind of cheating the question a little bit, but I think the need for validation from other people, right? And we've lost the sense of self, and again, understanding what is meaningful to us, and we've replaced it with this compulsion to have other people approve of us and what we're doing and how we are, and so that's why social media has blown up so much, I think, is because it knowingly or not filled that compulsion. And so I think it's this, to use a very trite phrase, a vicious cycle where they feed into each other until we have this like absolute nightmare storm that we're dealing with now with almost everybody in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think social media is such a big part of that. And it's, huge problem. What's your personal definition of happiness?
I would say having the time, the means, and the energy to do what you want to do and be who you want to be. And I think that the tricky part there is a lot of times we'll get maybe 2 of those out of the 3. And, like someone who's got all the money in the world or whatever, but has no time to do anything with it, doesn't matter. If you have a bunch of time and you can't afford to live in a way that supports your, what you want to do, doesn't really matter. So having all those things together is, I think, the key.
Yeah, absolutely. If you could give one piece of advice to your 18-year-old self, what would that be?
Oh man, only one. I think I would try to get myself farther ahead of the game and figuring out that I don't have to, I don't need the approval or the validation of other people to be content, right? And that it took me so many years to figure this out, and I still struggle with it to some extent, but much better, that it didn't really matter. All these things I did at that age really didn't matter. So many of them, the motivations for them were so unhealthy. So I think I would probably try to explain that to myself, but who knows if I could understand it at that age.
Well, final one, what are you most proud of?
I think having been able to bring a lot of seemingly unrelated experiences and abilities together to create, literally just create a career out of nothing, that has allowed me to, help support my wife and my daughter. She just graduated from college 2 weekends ago. And allows me to live this lifestyle that, while admittedly I have a lot of very stressful, busy days, as they say, I'm pretty much living the dream. So I think, taking all these things that were swirling around in life and my brain and turning it into a coherent process and system that created a lifestyle that I really love. I think I would have to say that.
I love that. Well, final one. Where can our listeners go if they want to find more about you?
Generally, greg-everett.com is kind of like a portal to everything I do. For the weightlifting / training side of it, catalystathletics.com is more specific. That's where all videos, articles, all these things are located. And then social media, Instagram's your best bet, and that's just at Catalyst Athletics. That's kind of all things I do right there.
Perfect. Well, we'll put all the links to that in the show notes. And Greg, thank you so much for making the time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Greg Everett, for joining me today and offering your insights. And thank you for listening. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the episode and any suggestions for topics you'd like to hear about. Feel free to leave a comment or send a DM. Your feedback is always appreciated. Please don't forget to click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram. It really makes a difference. Thank you so much.